Replacing the horrible clickpad of the T440s with the T450s. Now, if you've ever used the T440s, you've used this exact horrible clickpad that is pretty much unusable. Now, thankfully the T450 uses this one, which has actual physical buttons. Now, we'll start by removing the keyboard, though rather detaching the keyboard. We're actually going to pick it out. And to do that, we need to remove these 6 screws. And then we'll just pick out the keyboard. Now that the keyboard is nice and loose, we'll go ahead and get to work with the back cover. Now notice that I'm missing one screw from the bottom left, so you'll have to open that one too on your own. And this is pretty much just loosen all the screws, they won't come out, and then remove the cover. Now it's easier to remove the cover when you have one of these prying tools, but you don't need to have them, and you can use, for example, your nails. And the cover should just pop off. Now, the internal battery that we can see here has to be disabled from BIOS before you detach it. Now, to detach it, we need to remove these 3 screws, and then we can remove the power cable. Now that the battery is out of the way, we can see the touchpad flat-flex cable. And here we can see the exact same flat-flex cable on the new one. Now we'll go ahead and remove most of the screws holding down the motherboard. And of course we're going to remove the hard drive. And now we can take out the flat flex cable that connects the touchpad to the computer. And remove the 2 holding screws that connect the touchpad to the computer. Also remember that there's this little flat flex cable on the left side that you need to detach. Now we can get under the SATA connector where the 2 other holding screws for the touchpad are. And once those have been removed, we can then take out the gluing for the flat flex cable and finally remove the horrible touchpad. It'll just pop out. And then we'll put the new one in. And now note, you'll have to hold the touchpad with your hand to be able to align it correctly so that you can put the first screw in. And I would suggest that you try to put the one on the top left as the last one, because that particular screw is the hardest one to put the correct place. Once all the screws have been put in place, you can then connect the flat flex cable. And continue on putting the rest of the motherboard back together. And now note, this particular place was the wrong place to put the screw. That is actually a place where the chassis screw goes on. Also note on the left, the flat flex cable that we earlier detached, I forgot to reattach it. So we're going to have to do that now. And after that, since I'm a genius, I'm going to put the screw to the wrong place again. And I have to remove that later on so that I can actually get the cover back on. that's also the wrong place. So those two screws are actually posts for the chassis screw. Now note that I don't actually have a caddy for the hard drive, so it just kind of sits there. Now replacing the power cable for the battery is important because you cannot put it in its place once the battery has been screwed in. I've tried. Now that the battery's 3 screws have been attached, let's just put the cover back on. And again, just screw it in and the cover is done with. Now we are in the final stretch and we only need to put the keyboard back together and we'll be done. Now it's quite important that in the step that you deal with the keyboard you don't use force, because otherwise you might break keys, because the keys have very, very tiny holding pieces. Now note the Alt, which is going to break soon because I used too much force. But yeah, you only need to put the top part, you put the top part first and then you do the screws. And then you need to use the the flathead screwdriver to push the cover back in. And now you can see that the Alt is already broken. Now note when the key comes off, there's a tiny piece there above the dome. That was the part that broke. And I was able to glue it back in using cyanoacrylate glue. It took a couple of hours to do that, but I now have a laptop that has proper track point keys and it's still a T440. Thank you for watching.